Hello, everyone. My name is Anton, and I'm joined today by Jesse from Brokerage Solutions,
Hi, everybody.
and we'll just briefly go through the recent Expo, which happened just basically last month, and just overview of trends and potential development of Africa region for FX trading in general.
Fantastic.
Jesse, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. Thank you. How are you?
All well on my side as well.
Yeah.
I was actually not a part of the group that participated at the event, right? So you were one of the team.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about the event, about the venue, how you found the event in general.
The venue, so starting about the country itself. So I think the organizers chose a pretty good country to host the event. Not excluding the fact that the country itself is beautiful, but the fact that there is a number of people within the industry, namely brokers, that were locally there. So location-wise, that was a pretty good location to choose. Event itself, generally, I can say it was a great success, considering that it was the first event uh, of its scale in within the continent. Uh, First day was more B2C. The second day was more B2B. So yeah, in general, it was a great success, and we're looking forward to other future events within the continent.
Interesting. So you mentioned that the first day was B2C. What would you say was the split between the audience, maybe?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because most of the B2B that like the businesses that were there were either coming both days. So on the first day it would be I would say there was more like B2C than B2B. And then the second day we had more now B2B. So I would say it would be a split within the days, and it would be hard to split them right in the middle between like in a particular day.
Got it.
Yes.
Uh, you actually also attended the Dubai Expo, the IFEX one in January, I believe.
Yes.
How would you compare them? I mean, maybe it's not a fair comparison, right? Because the markets are completely different,
Yes.
but still the organizers are like partially the same.
Well, as you mentioned, it's pretty hard to compare the two because number one, the market is new. But what I would generally say is we have most of the big players that you see at the IFX who also attended the Finance Magnates Expo. Uh, with regards to attendance, so this one was split maybe B2B, B2C, but IFX, as we know, is more B2B. So I guess that would be the main difference between the two of them. Attendance wise, again, considering it's the first event, we cannot really speak on that, but IFX has been there for a while, has been hosting it in Dubai for quite a long time. So naturally, the attendance for that particular event is way higher. So maybe that would be a difference. But then again, it's just a matter of time as we're getting traction and people within the continent are getting more used to this such events. Maybe we'll get more numbers in such events as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it might be false to assume that the countries from the region, or like the brokers, or like any entrepreneurs, traders, are willing to travel as far as to Dubai. I mean, maybe the closest markets of like northern part of Africa are present, but then if we talk about most southern parts, it might not be the case that they actually ever been to any of the previous expos,
True, true. And
and now they're just learning about the organizers, right?
true, 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 true. Because we also met a couple of new names, a couple of new partners. So it was a big deal actually having that particular event in that particular region. Because number one, as you mentioned, it might be a constraint for everybody to travel all the way to Dubai. But bringing that event home really like opened eyes for not just us as technology providers, but as brokers as themselves also viewed, okay, fine, there's a particular market that probably is unfilled, and we might actually think of going through to that market as well.
What would you say actually about the flow of people, right? I mean, attendance wise, at least how it appeared.
Well, first day, I would say there was a lot of traders, so it was mostly B2C. There was a lot of people, I would say, coming to the different booths that were there and going for the keynotes or the discussions that were being held. Second day, it was less people walking in, mostly people who already have booths set up, or maybe businesses who probably heard, okay, fine, there was an expo yesterday, and let me go and just see how it is. And actually, we made some good connection with people who heard about the event on the first day, couldn't make it, and actually came on the second day. So, second day, there was less traction B2C wise, but uh, B2B wise, at least it gave the businesses time to actually uh, talk, because most of them were maybe swamped with customers who were coming to their booths on the previous day.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does make sense. Actually, reflecting back on the last event from Finance Magnates I've been a part of, which was London Summit in November last year. It actually was the case, like similar case, where companies were not like planning to attend, but then since their offices are basically the same area, they just like, yeah, we'll pop in during the lunch and check what's going on.
True.
So it is quite an important decision to be present within the community and not just like trying to
Yeah.
travel everybody
True,
to
true,
the
true, true,
destination.
true, true. I guess that's a great win for the organizers. I think it attracts those type of people who, okay, fine, they might not actually have a booth set up, but they'll be willing to take time out of their busy schedules and actually come to the event and see what's happening and make connections and business.
What do you actually think about the chosen country, right? I mean, South Africa, from what I know, is definitely one of the leading economies. But there are some maybe even bigger ones, right? Like Nigeria or like Kenya.
Well, in the brokerage in this particular industry, I would say that South Africa is the leading one. Of course, there's countries like Nigeria and Kenya who are pretty much growing, and maybe within the next couple of years or maybe months, they will be at par with South Africa. But I think uh, in terms of retail brokerage and this particular industry, I think South Africa has been more open, number one, maybe regulation wise and so forth. So I think there's more players who've been there for more years than in particularly Kenya or in Nigeria. Well, I can speak personally about Kenya because, number one, even if you speak about regulated brokers, we do not have quite a lot of them. So I think we have 7 or 8 registered regulated brokers who are operating within the Kenyan territory, which is not a lot. I think
Okay.
in South Africa there's a big number. But then again, that shows that there is so much potential within the continent to grow. So I think South Africa as a start, it is actually a great choice for the organizers to choose. And maybe next year they'll choose either Nigeria or Kenya. Let's see how it goes.
Well, I actually, yeah, the at least the most recent statistics published actually by Finance Magnates um, in back in 2020, back in 2022, right? Last year, basically. They stated that the estimated daily active traders for South Africa was about 190K,
Yeah.
and for Nigeria it was about 200 traders. And then when I was trying to look for more recent data, like the estimates were flying around, or like estimates were thrown around were about 300K for Nigeria. So
Ah,
it might be actually quite a
bigger.
drastic improvement, yeah. Or like maybe we see the growth, because I do remember there have been quite well, like at least there been starting the discussion, the dialogue, and the interest
Yeah.
in the region back in like pre-COVID times.
Yeah.
But then, of course, COVID happened and like everything slowed down, and it's well, at least it's good to see that the interest is back. Like the industry hasn't died out during that time, but instead actually
Growing.
attracted more audience.
Yeah.
Getting back to the event itself.
Okay.
I know our booth was located quite close to the stage.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you've been able to passively attend all the panels, all the keynotes. What are maybe key takeaways or hot topics you picked up on during the event?
One of it that caught my attention was, well, basically within the digital world, the IT space, things like advancement of technology and blockchain and artificial intelligence, which is now becoming pretty big and hot conversation within this particular industry. So there are different speakers sharing their ideas and points of the impacts of AI, for example, in this particular sector and where they see the market going and the industry going with the introduction of AI. So that was one that was pretty hot. Another one is regulation and compliance. So we had people from the FSC sit down and explain, and especially the fact that this is a quite a new market. It's quite a great area for a lot of brokers who want to enter the market. So they do not understand the regulation, the do's, the don'ts, how they need to deal with the whole framework and everything. And basically, having FSCA there at least shed some light on some of the things. In South Africa, there's licenses that were introduced recently that I think most brokers also do not understand. So I think within the not just South Africa, but the continent at large, regulation and compliance is something that is a hot topic. So I guess most brokers are also kind of not fully like in the understanding of how different compliances and different regulation goes with regards to different jurisdictions. So maybe that might be things that are holding them back from entering particular markets. So that was pretty big as well. And payments. So payment system across the continent, they're pretty fragmented. So you'd get in Kenya, for example, you're using M-Pesa. In Tanzania, they're using a different system. So basically, for brokers coming into markets, there's very different segmented and fragmented payment systems that it will be very hard for them to, for example, get deposits or withdrawals from their particular clients. So once that particular infrastructure is actually set up to standards, I think that would be great. Another thing that was mentioned within this payment platform thing was the pricing. So most payment platforms, from what I heard, were pretty expensive, more expensive than more industries that are more developed within this particular space. So I think with time, with maybe different policies that are set in place, there can be a reduction in the price, because as I understood, most of the prices are raised because of government policies and regulations. So maybe once we get more players within the industry, we might be able to push down the prices, and it might be easier for retail brokers to actually operate and get, let's say, withdrawals or deposits from their particular clients.
That actually a good point. And from the recent news, I've heard that there have been quite a big amount of new startups or like projects that been getting traction in terms of actually open banking, decentralized payments, and like enabling peer-to-peer payments, or like making it much easier. And as you mentioned, that the governments are some governments are more restrictive in terms of money flow,
True.
and I believe that was at least the case with South Africa for quite a bit actually. I'm not sure if it has changed recently. The thing where like if you would need to get money from the
Yep.
country, you would need to go through like specific compliance, specific like requests, and like basically verify any money flow that goes cross
True.
borders. And if again we speak about the markets in general, yes, of course you start a brokerage, you develop in your local market, but then if you plan to expand and plan to expand to other countries in the
Yes.
region, the question about regulations is quite prominent, right?
True. Yes.
I believe FSCA is trying to become one of the leading organization or like regulators, but I'm not actually that aware about like Nigeria or like Kenyan.
Well, in South Africa, I'm not very sure if FSCA does operate within the whole South African bloc, but yeah, so FSCA essentially is a South African regulatory body. In Kenya, we have our own. It's called Capital Markets Authority, which again is still growing within the space of regulation and creating rules and all that kind of thing, and compliance and all that. So it's a space that is growing, and maybe with time would have more uh, clear rules and regulations for brokers to follow.
Interesting. So what are the, well, I mean, we might have already touched upon several topics, but what are the main differences in your opinion in terms of establishing or running a brokerage in Africa region compared to other emerging markets?
The difference, I would say, number one, as I've mentioned, is regulatory environment. So, let's say in Europe, in the Middle East, they've been in the industry for quite a long time. So they already have an established regulatory environment that brokers basically know how everything works. Okay, so that can be one of the differences. Here, we're still trying to understand our local regulations and trying to get the frameworks. So that can be a main difference. Uh, some other thing can be infrastructure. So as you understand, Africa is pretty large and different countries vary with regards to technology and electricity and internet and all that kind of thing. So the market can be big when you think about it in numbers, in population wise. But then again, when you put infrastructure and connectivity into play, then you have uh, a chosen few number of players that can actually be like viable. Because again, if you're entering the market, then you need people who have good connectivity for you to be able to run a successful brokerage. So I think that might be a hindrance to most of the brokers entering particular markets within the African space. Another thing is financial literacy. So again, we have countries like South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, which are coming up as key players and big players within this particular space. But we have other countries where financial literacy is pretty low. And basically, if brokers are to come into these particular markets, then they should take things like financial literacy into account so they know, okay, fine, we still have that particular task of actually educating these particular customers that we are actually onboarding for them to know, okay, fine, what is financial markets, what are the things that come into play, investments, products, and risk management, basically. So I think those are the major differences, I would say, this
So
particular
it
time.
actually very good point that the role of brokerage when working with Africa region is more of an educator than just a simple venue to the markets,
Yeah,
as they are working with basically new type of investors,
true,
right?
true, true.
Who are just learning about it. They have some savings. They are interested in like wealth management, but they might not be aware about all the nuances. And again, if we speak about trading and FX markets and like all the crypto stuff and all the different
Yeah,
instruments, it is very overwhelming for for the newbies, right?
Yes, and I think maybe that might be an issue that is actually holding back most brokers. Because maybe some of them are holding back, saying, "Okay, fine, you know what? Let's leave the big brokers to go down and do all the work of educating and putting all this information to everybody. And then once everybody's all educated, everybody comes in. So it might be a hindrance actually to brokers coming in. Yeah,
Well, at least from on the good side, yeah, on the upper side, right?
yeah.
We do see more projects coming up with like focus on education. That would be FinTech Association of South Africa. That focuses on like increasing financial literacy, at least in South Africa, for traders as well as entrepreneurs. And actually, Amazon Web Services launched their FinTech Accelerator
Ah, okay.
in March, and I think the application has just like
Finished or closed.
yeah, the due date for application was like 27th of April. So it's like quite recent news. And they are actually focusing on assisting entrepreneurs in fintech space and like open banking,
Okay.
in decentralized banking, digital banking, payments, and of course other fintech projects in terms of knowing how to establish business, teaching them about modern practices,
Yeah.
and like basically it's like a 10-week accelerator program,
Yeah.
which again should be a very good thing for the region
True. True.
and its development.
Yeah.
How do you actually see the future development of the region, right?
So I think the region itself is quite promising. Number one, we have a very large and growing population, um, increasing internet penetration, and an increasing number of middle class, uh, basically population. So who have disposable income to actually get into the investment space. So I think these particular factors contribute a big potential in increasing the number of investors and participation within the financial markets field. So I think those ones are major. Number one, even and another issue is advancements in technology, mobile banking, and payment systems. So because it's an ongoing communication and it's something that is within the space, so once we've cut down these barriers of these fragmented payment systems within the region and having maybe a centralized system that might be easier, then it will be possible to go through. So I think there's great potential within the region itself, and I see quite a big growth perspective in the next couple of months.
Agree. I do agree. It does look like a promising region with lots of interested entrepreneurs who
True.
might not yet start a brokerage, but they're willing to learn about the industry. They're willing to take their time, and well, the amount of sheer attendance, I think it was about like 3K or even maybe even more.
Yeah.
So it was quite a big event,
Yes.
especially for the first one in the region.
Yeah.
Let's well, we can of course talk for ages, right? But let's try to conclude for maybe what businesses should pay attention to when either launching a business in Africa or maybe entering
The market.
African market. Yeah.
So I think the first thing is they should do broad market research. Number one, just to understand the specific dynamics of the targeted country. Because number one, Africa is pretty big. There's different mentalities across different points of the continent. So for a person or a business trying to get into this particular market, I think they should understand the specific dynamics of that particular market, do a thorough research before coming into that particular market. So that's one. Another thing within the space, compliance as well. So compliance and regulation is a big issue. It was discussed multiple times during the expo, And I think a business that is coming to set up here should, number one, get compliant, get through all the legal stuff before they get into the particular market. Two, they should consider infrastructure and technology. So, as I mentioned, the continent itself is growing and internet penetration is actually growing. But at this particular time, I think that plays a key role in whether or not a particular business is going to set up in a given country. So I think that one is important. Once that's determined, I think it can be easy. Another thing is education, as I mentioned. So investor education and outreach. So they should be willing and ready to do that part. Because again, this is a new market. Most people are not well versed within this particular space. And if you're considering to come into this particular market, then educating your basically customers will be a great addition, and I think it will help push the particular product that you're pushing. And I think partnerships. I think having local partners who have expertise in the particular industry would be a great addition. Because number one, some countries, some businesses would rather bring their own experienced team to this particular region. But then again, I do believe that you need locals who understand the local mentality and how everything works to actually help those who are coming in to run that particular business. So I think having partners or local people who are well versed with the industry can be a great addition, and it will smooth out the process of you actually getting into this particular market. So I think those are the key ones that I can mention from my
I
end.
agree, and yeah, they all sound on point,
Yeah.
right? And the only thing I might add, right, would be if, let's say, you're a brokerage that is launching from within, right?
Yes.
You're the local brand and you're trying to establish and grow. Trying to do it on your own might be a bit tricky, right?
True.
Especially when we talk, like, take into consideration all the challenges that are already present in the region,
Yeah.
which you need to overcome with your own knowledge, but then with the knowledge of actual setup, trading platforms, any additional services, again, hosting, right?
Yeah.
All the connectivity thing. These things can be much cheaper when they're outsourced,
True.
and they will be much more robust. And trying to juggle all the
Yeah,
balls
true, true.
might be ambitious, but might not be the most reasonable way to do business
True, true, true.
in modern days.
I think actually another thing is risk. Actually, I think every business need to understand the risk of that particular region that they're thinking of actually going into. Because number one, you need to understand the unique risks that are associated with particular countries. Yeah? There's countries that are not politically stable. So the political stability is something that should be considered. Number one, risk operations basically of your particular team. Maybe currency volatility, because you don't want to bring a business that number one, the customers are not going to be able to afford to make those particular deposits, because converting, let's say, Kenya shillings to US dollar is right now pretty high, and you need to choose: am I going to invest, or am I going to use it to do other necessary things? So I think political stability, the currency volatility is things to also consider once you're thinking about joining this particular market.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your
I
time
think
as well.
we'll wrap up and we'll catch up on the topic later on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll talk. Cheers.